Hey class, this is week 3. We're going to multiply some decimals. So for multiplying decimals, there's 3 steps. First, we're going to line up the numbers left to right like you would line up numbers like you would with whole numbers. So if I wanted to take 7.7 times 4.5, I'm actually going to line that up as just 77 times 45. And then follow the traditional method of multiplying. So start with the 5 and do 5 times 7 is 35. Carry the 3. Then 5 times this 7 is 35, plus 3 is 38. So I took the 5 times both 7s. Then start with the 4. Since the 4 is in the tens place, we add the 0 down here. And then take the 4 times 7 is 28. Carry the 2. Then 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30. And then we add 5 plus 0. 8 plus 8 is 16, carry the 1, 4, and 3. Okay, you might have learned how to do this traditional method using lattice method, so I'll just review that real quick with you too. For lattice, you make, so 77 times 45, and then you make, each one has a box, and then you add the diagonals, and then you multiply. Like 7 times 5 goes right here, so it'd be 35. And 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 4 is 28. And then 7 times 5 is 35. Then you add the diagonals. So here we would get 5. And then this diagonal be 8 plus 3 is 11. Plus 5 more is 16. We have to carry the 1 to the next column. Adding that diagonal. 8, 9, 10, 11, plus 3 more, be 14, carry the 1, 2 plus 1 is 3. So we would get the same answer there. Then for adding decimals, the last step is to add in the decimal. So you count the number of places to the right of the decimal in each factor, then count the same number of decimals of digits from the right in the answer. So what that means is that I have 1, 2, decimal numbers behind the decimal point in my original product or my original question. So then the product, the answer has to have 1, 2 numbers behind the decimal in the answer. So I put the decimal right there. So 34.65 would be the final answer, or 34 and 65 hundredths. So let's practice placing the decimal point in the answer. So 25 and 3/10 times 10 and 6/10, there's 1, 2 numbers behind the decimal in the quotient here. So in the product, we have 1, 2, so the decimal would be right there, 2 numbers behind the decimal again. In this one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal. So then in our answer, we have to have 4 numbers behind the decimal. So the decimal point would go right there. So that we have 4 behind. Here we have 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal. So we'd have to have 3 behind the decimal in the product, in the answer. So 26.818. And that would be read as 26,818 thousandths. Okay, so let's practice multiplying decimals. If I want to do 3/10 times 21 hundredths, I'm going to set this up so that it is 21 times 3. So I'm going to multiply like I would with whole numbers. So 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6. And then I have to say, okay, I have 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal. So I want 3 numbers behind the decimal here. So 1, 2, 3. Since I have an open spot here, I do have to add a 0. So your final answer would be 0.063 for that one. So 11.8 or 11 and 8/10 times 6.5, 6 and 5/10. I'm going to do 118 times 65. So I'm going to multiply like I would with whole numbers and kind of ignore the decimal point to start with. So 5 times 8 is 40, carry the 4. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9, and then 5 times 1 is 5. And then with the 6, starting in the tens place, so add the placeholder 0. 6 times 8 is 48, carry the 4 again. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 4 is 10, carry the 1. 6 times 1, 6 plus 1 is 7. Then add those two together. 9 plus 8 is 17, 5, 6, and 7. And then add in the decimal. So I have 1, 2 numbers behind the decimal point in my question. So 1, 2 numbers behind the decimal in the answer. So there we go. And you can leave the 0 at the end or not. For this one, you have to include the 0 because it comes before the 6. Trailing zeros like 0.5 and 0.50 is the same thing. But 0.05 is much smaller than 0.5, so that's kind of a difference there. Okay, let's just try a couple more. So 253 times 106 now. So I'm going to multiply these numbers without the decimal points. So 6 times 3 is 18, carry the 1. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 1 is 31. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Now moving on to the 0. Well, 0, first I start with the placeholder, but 0 times anything is 0. So 0 times 3, 0 times 5, and 0 times 2 is 0. So now I'm going to move to the 1. Since the 1 is in the hundreds place, I need 2 zeros before I can start. Then 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. Then we add. So 8 in that column, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 plus 5 is 6, and 2. And then adding back in the decimal, I have 1 number behind the decimal here and 1 number behind the decimal there. So 2 total. So moving the decimal from the end over 2 places. So 268 and 1800ths. I'm going to do this last one using that lattice method. So we write the numbers along the edges and make a box. And then each number gets its own column and row. Then you draw through the diagonals, like so. And then you multiply corresponding spots. So 1 times 2 is 2, so 0, 2. 2 times 2 is 4, so 0, 4. 0 times 2 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 0 is 0. And 1 times 3 is 3. Then add the columns. So 3. This column would be 2. This column adds up to 6. This column adds up to 7. And this column's 2, and that's 0. So 2, 7, 6, 2, 3. Then count the decimals. We have 2 decimals there and 2 decimals there, so a total of 4. So from the end, you go back 1, 2, 3, 4 places and place the decimal. So the final answer would be 2.7623. Okay, try a few on your own now. So for the first ones, you're just circling the correct answer. So based on counting the number of decimals, make sure that the answer has the same number of decimals. And then there's 3 multiplying decimals for you to try, and I would encourage you to, after you show all your work and try it, double check your answer with the calculator. Then remember to turn it in by sending me a copy of the page. You're going to send that with another app, and then make sure you choose Schoology, which should be up here in your list, Schoology. Copy to Schoology, and then choose the assignment, which would be week 3 multiplying decimals.